Hello, everybody. I'm Chuck Schiele with Making Music Magazine, and we're here today with multi-instrumentalist and for today's purpose, fiddler Sara Watkins of the Nickel Creek fame, among other projects.
I'm
And
famous for so many things.
yeah, so many things. I know.
It's
I've
not
been
true. It's not true. I'm being sarcastic.
well. I was looking at your Wikipedia, and you have like I don't know. There's like 50 groups and 50 projects you're in. Everything from your brother's solo project, Chris's. How's Chris?
He's great.
I haven't seen him in a long time either. We're probably
Yeah.
around the same time. Anyway, Chris Thiel, and you have Dan Wilson, the I'm With Her band. I know about that band somehow. It crosses my path. How do you keep all that going with, I presume you have family life, regular life, and you have to balance all this stuff? How do you do all that?
Just kind of the way everybody balances work and family, I suppose. I like to have a lot of different projects, not necessarily going at the same time, but I enjoy bands. I would say possibly more than solo stuff, and um, when I do a solo record, that's you know my name on the ticket, and my everything's my responsibility, and and I'm just like the one kind of at the center of the stage. That is really satisfying and can really fun way to perform and to explore a show. But I get tired of that. And at the end of one album cycle, I am always craving collaboration in a band kind of way. And that's probably because I grew up in a band. I grew up in Nickel Creek. And so that's at the foundation of my music experience. But even so, I that probably made an impact. And um, I find that, after one project, I want to kind of jump into something else. And I'm really fortunate that I get to do that. And um, the first time that I did a solo record, I worked really hard behind it. I was on tour for a year and a half, in bands and losing a lot of money and just so exhausted. I had no time to write, and here I was after about a year and a half on tour, and I really needed to work. And I was doing my last gigs in the UK, and I was invited to join the Decemberists to play fiddle in their band for 6 months. And that's kind of what started this whole pattern for me because it was a godsend. I got to work and be in a band uh, collaborative scene, even though I was a side musician, and and I also that like gave me the space and time to write because I didn't have so many responsibilities on that tour. I just had to be on stage at sound check and showtime. Um, that gave me time to read and watch movies and like recharge and walk around towns and just notice things and all of the things that are needed to actually have some thoughts in your head and some feelings on things that might want to write about. And I have noticed that ever since then, I have found a different kinds of bands and different kinds of shows and tours and albums to be re-energizing, and it's kind of like rotating crops.
Hmm. So, in regard to your solo work that you mentioned, I believe John Paul Jones produced some of that. Is that
The
right?
first record, yeah, he did the
How
first
was
record.
that? What's he like? How was
He's so
that?
sweet. Oh my gosh, he's just so sweet and such a killer musician. But I mean, he made me feel like I deserved to make this record, and he gave me a really nurturing place to sort of establish my home turf on my solo record. And that record didn't end up being terribly challenging to listen to. It's my kind of what I refer to as like my home base, and it represents a lot of what the foundation of my of music for me. And from there, And I needed to do that. I really needed to do that. And he's just such a wonderful person to work with. Um, and then from there, I got to kind of take steps towards, the future and who I am now.
Nice. So you play a variety of instruments. I know you mostly as fiddle, but it looks like you also play ukulele, guitar, percussion,
I strum a little bit of guitar and ukulele, but I'm mostly just a fiddle player.
and you sing very well. I've heard you sing, so we were not going to understate that. But as in regard to your fiddle playing, how is it that you got to be involved with the fiddle? Everybody has a story about how they gained affinity in their relationship with their instrument. What's yours?
When my brother and I were little, our parents took us to a place that just closed down in Oceanside called That Pizza Place. It closed down during COVID. It's been around, but it was around for a very long time. It was just it's kind of old school pizza parlor,
I
and
know it. Yeah.
there was a residency for a long time. A band called Bluegrass Etc. had a residency for probably like 7 or 10 years, and they played every Saturday night. And we started going to it. It's a great, you know, kind of cheap thing to do on a Saturday night with your family, and there was
Sure.
a really warm community of people who would come regularly to see this band. And I think seeing the music live and really appealed to us. Just it seemed really normal. There is a fluent like a fluidity between the audience and the band. They would, the band got came to know the audience very well, and so different people would come up and do their thing. Like um, Richard, the postman, would come up and do buck dancing, and Kenny Owens would come up and play spoons, and certain people would come up and sing one of three songs that they sang well, and they also invited Sean and Chris and I from Nickel Creek up to play tunes, and the band became our teachers, and we really really lucked out because in addition to them being really great players, they were Dennis Kaplinger and John Moore were just the best teachers we could have ever dreamt of.
I
And
was just going to say, I was going to ask you about musicians who helped shape your path. Obviously, I expect to hear Kaplinger in there.
yeah, he was my
Phenomenal
fiddle.
music.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. He was my fiddle teacher for
Is that
years.
right? Oh,
Yeah,
wow. I didn't know that. Wow.
we asked him to teach me when I was 6, and he told he told my mom to get me in Suzuki lessons first as a foundation, which is super solid advice. And we did. I took lessons for 2 years. I got through book 2, and then we came back. And I remember my mom like pestering him, being really persistent to try and get him to teach me, and he did. And he's just like he was just the perfect mentor teacher for me. He always talked to me like I was a grown up and expected me to listen and to practice and to pay attention to what he was saying and to use my brain. And he never talked down to me like I was a kid. He never like you know made me feel or like I knew that he meant what he said when he was talking to me. He
I
wasn't
know what
just
you mean.
treating me like a little kid, and that meant the world to me.
Yeah, I've worked with him in the studio a couple times, and I have the same impression of him. To speak with him, his talent is enormous, and it's humbling to stand next to him. However, the way he converses with you, you feel like you're on equal, respected ground.
Yeah,
And I have to admit, I learned, and I don't think I taught him anything, but I learned a lot of producing his parts on somebody's album. And
he is straightforward and kind.
extremely, yeah. What are the things that keep you inspired as an artist?
Uh, I think that um, it's hard to be. I think being inspired by art takes effort for me because it requires me to stop and um, I should say that like I find that if I'll notice that I really need to and want to experience something that's not that I'm not experiencing, like or feel something or just get away from the literal, get away from monotony. And um, I know a lot of people right now who are digging into poetry in a new level. I think that for me, it takes an effort to be like, okay, I need to make a space for this. I need to set like create a space or just like in my brain, um, this this willingness to listen, um, in order to receive that. And um, so I have to put everything away and ideally have a little peace and quiet to like read some poetry or listen to a record as an activity of just listening and not doing anything else. And um, or just or uh, go to a sculpture museum or something like that where there's just there are things to be received. Or nature, man, nature. um, that's a big one. But I think it does take a little effort in life right now to be in a place where I can receive art. And I think art is the stuff that's hard to define and hard to pinpoint. And so, for lack of words and for lack of specificity, we find these other ways of expressing what we mean. And um, I think that requires the listener and the audience, whatever that means, depending on the art form, to be in a place where they're ready to receive that.
Very good. Um, what would be the things that attract you to working with any particular artist? Since you work with a variety of them,
Yeah.
what is it
I
that says,
I
yeah,
think
I work with
a huge part of my world. I'm so lucky that my particular musical world is really uh, anchored in community, and in that community are a like a just a wellspring of friendships and inspirational things like just the people who are I forgot the question. I'm sorry.
the things that attract you
Oh, to a
working
collaborative
with other
person. Yeah.
people.
I think just like seeing, it's nice to know that you have some things in common. Um, Sometimes you find yourself in a songwriting collaborative situation. Maybe you're meeting someone for the first time and you're writing a song together, and it can go really well and it can go very poorly. And I think, in my experience, the things that make it go well are when you find your commonalities and you know that you can expand on that. Whether your commonalities are work ethic or just the rhythm of how you write, or whether your commonality is shared life experience or common appreciation for something else or someone else.
Hmm.
And so, in all the collaborations, there's there's some kind of mutual appreciation or um, a commonality that you can kind of hang your hat on. And whether it's just for a show or one little evening of writing, or whether you end up touring or becoming a band, I think that it's nice to just kind of let things develop on their own and see where things go and how the relationship works, because um, it's really important that the touring and the music experience is is like holistically a healthy environment for me. I've never been in a band that has I've never been in a band for very long that is very dysfunctional. All bands like families are a bit crazy and have to find their own little way of working, but there are some situations that you're like, all right, that was cool. There were some great things that came out of it, but I don't really feel like diving into that again. And it's just, I think, like any relationship or working environment in that
Yeah, I think that happened to me once.
way.
So for the people, much of our magazine caters to an educational aspect. So for those people who look up to you, um, what would you say to people learning the instrument? What would be the most paramount thing you could, you know, offer to
Be
somebody learning?
patient. Be patient. Um, I think there are things with playing fiddle and violin that are they seem like tiny achievements, but they are huge victories if you can just like play a note from frog to tip without it the bow bouncing, without it squeaking or squawking. If you can play it in tune, there are some really it's a challenging instrument to get the fundamentals down. And I think one of the reasons adults have trouble with it is because when you're learning as a kid, you don't really care how bad it sounds. As an adult, you're like, oh, I'd like this to sound nice as soon as possible.
Well, egos
And
develop as we
it
turn to
takes
adults as well.
patience. Yeah, it takes patience. I think it's really good to take lessons, and I fully recommend the Suzuki method, which is in a class. It's the classical method, but um, it uses ear training in a way that is really helpful. In that it encourages you to learn by listening and not just by sight reading. And I think that they have great methods for like getting the basics down, and I find that that's so helpful. And then I think it's really fun to like have a couple of people that you can play with. Um, I've been messing around with the piano lately, and I'm gonna get together with my friend who's messing around with fiddle, and we're both gonna be bad at our instruments, and we'll get to play together, and it's gonna be really fun.
Cool.
So I think that it's nice to be able to be like, hey, do you barely play guitar? I barely play fiddle. Let's do it together. What are we gonna
Ah, the
play?
point being to remember to have fun. Music
Yeah,
should always be fun.
but I think like I mean, I don't think music should always be fun. Practicing is not always fun. Maybe it's satisfying, but like yeah, it should be fun. You should enjoy it. Nobody should torture themselves with it for years and years and years. But I didn't want to practice it all the time when I was a kid. Like there's you got to work at it, right? Like anything. It's not going to be fun 100% of the time. So you work at it, and then when when you achieve something, like, oh, I did it. I played three notes in tune. Like that's something to celebrate. So it's like climbing a mountain or climbing a hill, and sometimes you might be a little hungry, and sometimes you might. So then other times you'll get to look around and see the view and smell the fresh air, and it's a really special thing, and I encourage everyone to find some lessons. You can rent instruments. They're pretty low commitment ways to do this, and now's a great time. I've started practicing every evening when my daughter is in the bath because I found that there would be several days would go by and I just wouldn't pick up my fiddle, and and so it's a nice tiny little rhythm, and even like 20 minutes a day is so much better than nothing.
So what's the first thing that's on your mind when you go to practice for the benefit of our audience? Practicing can be tricky for some people. I mean, they know
Yeah,
they might have an etude to go over,
yeah.
but there's more to it than that.
There's a
What
lot
kind
to
of thing?
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for me at this point, I'm trying to stay nimble and I'm not improvising with musicians a lot, which means that, I mean, some people might notice that they're not talking as well, speaking as well as they would have. Like a month or two into COVID, into quarantine, like the isolation, I found that I just like my communication skills and my conversation ability had really diminished. And I just kind of was fine not saying anything, and I didn't know how to do small talk, and it was really annoying. And those are similar things to what I'm experiencing musically. Like improvisation is something that you do when you're reacting to other people in real time. And the challenge is always to be able to have things that you want to play and then to be able to play them. So you have the idea in your head, that's the first challenge. And then your fingers do it. And you know how to find the right notes and you do it with the right timing. And you play it the way that you heard it in your head. That's the goal for improvisation. And there are many hiccups that can happen along the way and in that process from brain to fingers. And so when I'm practicing right now, what I'm doing is trying to smooth out all of those, any kind of like burrs or grime and grit that's kind of clogged up the pipeline, try and like smooth that out. So maybe I'm practicing with a metronome to keep me honest with my timing, or maybe I'm just trying to think of what I want to play, and if I don't do it, actually stopping and correcting and being like, no, this is actually what I wanted to do. Like, get comfy doing this, because we all find shortcuts that get us off the hook, and try to keep myself honest in that way.
Very good. We have 4 minutes left.
Okay.
Can I ask you one more question?
Please, yeah.
Okay. The same question I have on that note, what is the first thing that you think of as you hit the stage? You're walking up the steps, they're cheering, they just called you up, you're going up there and you get the vibe on. What are you thinking? Are you rattled? Are you comfortable?
No, I think generally I just take a big inhale. Like I'm, it's just yeah, like the feeling in my body when you were asking me that question was just like, and getting ready, like just starting. I don't typically get nervous. I do, like, there's a little bit of stress that happens before a show just because of like getting started. And it's kind of a nice stress. It's not always there, but I miss it for sure. And my brother and I have been doing Patreon performances twice a month for Watkins Family Hour, behind this record that we put out this year. And in lieu of touring, we've been doing these shows, and it's been really fun. And we've been having guests come by and join us outside, spaced out and all that. And it's nice to have that little bit of stress, like, oh shoot, we got 5 minutes. Like, let's get in tune, let's get everything ready, make sure that all the mics and all the tech stuff is working. And it's nice to have like a little moment of tension so that we can start the show. And those little things are markers in the day and in the rhythm of a typical musician's life. And it's nice to have little hints of that.
Wonderful. Well, I certainly appreciate you visiting with us and your candidness on these topics. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck to all your future endeavors.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
And thanks for stopping by. I hope we see you again soon.
Yes, me too.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Sarah.
Bye, Chuck.
Bye. Okay, everyone. Thanks a lot for watching our interview here at Making Music with Sara Watkins. I'm Chuck Schiele. I'm here with our producer, Paula Pickering, who's facilitating the technology of all this. Thank you, Paula. And if you like the show, tell everybody you know. Tell your brother, tell your sister, tell your mom, and hit the like button. Be sure to follow us on all our social media platforms. And you can see all that stuff in the description below. And check back routinely. We do these interviews with all these people all the time. And we will see you soon. Have a great day.